She thought she was calling for help. She had no idea she was calling in a debt she couldn't afford to owe. The parking garage beneath Mercy General Hospital was the kind of place that made you walk faster. Level B2. 40-watt fluorescents that buzzed like dying insects. Concrete pillars tagged with old spray paint. The smell of motor oil and something worse underneath it. Old water, standing still for years in the corners where the drains had given up. Nora Quinn finished her 12-hour shift at 2:14 in the morning. She was wearing compression socks, a pair of sneakers she'd duct-taped along the left toe seam, and a hospital ID badge that still showed her orientation photo from 3 years ago, the one where she looked like she'd slept and had opinions about the future. She didn't look like that anymore. She had $47 in her checking account. She had a second shift pickup at the diner on Clements Street starting in 6 hours. She had a student loan statement in her email that she'd left unread for 11 days because opening it didn't help anything. She was cutting through level B2 the short way, past the staff elevator, past the maintenance closet, past the row of reserved spaces near the far wall that always sat empty except for one black SUV that never moved. The black SUV that was always parked there, every single night. Tonight, the back door was open. Nora slowed. She wasn't the kind of person who slowed down in empty parking garages at 2 in the morning. She knew better. Every woman who'd ever worked a night shift knew better. But there was a child's sneaker on the ground next to the open door. Just one. A little white sneaker with a Velcro strap, lying on its side on the oil-stained concrete. Nora stopped walking. She looked left. She looked right. She heard nothing except the fluorescence and a distant elevator ding from somewhere above her. She took 3 steps toward the SUV. Inside, slumped sideways across the back seat, was a little boy. Maybe 5 years old, maybe younger. He was dressed in a navy sweater and dark pants, the kind of outfit someone put on a child for a formal occasion and then forgot to take off. His face was pale in a way that had nothing to do with lighting. His lips had a faint gray cast at the corners. He wasn't moving. Nora's training hit before her fear did. She was at the door in 2 steps, 2 fingers at the side of the boy's neck. Pulse, present but slow, too slow. His breathing was shallow, irregular, with a pause between each exhale that lasted just a beat too long. And there was a smell, faint, almost sweet, underneath the leather and the cold air from the garage. Bitter almonds. Nora had read about it once in a toxicology module she'd taken out of curiosity during her 2nd year of nursing school. She'd never expected to actually smell it. She'd never expected it to matter. But here it was, and she knew what it meant. She pulled her phone out of her scrub pocket and called 911 first. Gave them the location, the level, the description. The dispatcher told her to stay on the line. She stayed on the line. But the boy's breathing changed while she was talking. A longer pause, a stuttering restart, and Nora looked at the phone in her hand and made a decision she couldn't fully explain even later. She put the dispatcher on hold. She looked in the boy's front pocket, then the side pocket. Nothing. She looked at the seat beside him, a child's drawing on a folded piece of paper, and underneath it, tucked into the crease of the seat, a phone, an adult's phone, expensive. Locked but with an emergency contact displayed on the lock screen. One name, Bastian. Nora pressed call. It rang once. Who is this? Not a question, a command. The voice on the other end was low and controlled and had the particular texture of a man who was accustomed to being obeyed. My name is Nora Quinn, she said. I'm a nurse at Mercy General. I'm in the parking garage on level B2, and I found a little boy unconscious in the back of a black SUV. He has a slow pulse and irregular breathing, and I'm smelling something that I think might be cyanide. I've already called 911. I need to know if he has any medical conditions I should know about, and I need you to get down here right now. Silence. 2 full seconds of silence. Then, don't move. The line went dead. Nora looked at the phone in her hand. She looked at the little boy. She climbed into the back seat beside him, positioned his airway, and kept her fingers on his pulse, and she did not move. The ambulance arrived in 4 minutes. The man named Bastian arrived in 3. She heard him before she saw him. Footsteps on the concrete. Not running, but covering distance too fast for a walk. The sound of someone who had learned a long time ago that running showed panic. 2 sets of footsteps. Then a third. He appeared at the open door of the SUV, And the first thing Nora noticed was that he was not what she'd been picturing. She'd been picturing someone soft, someone rich soft, the kind of man who owned an expensive car and kept a phone in the back seat for emergencies and had never actually had one until now. Bastien Moray was not soft. He was somewhere in his early 40s, dark-haired, with the kind of face that looked like it had been designed for a specific purpose and had been carrying out that purpose for decades without complaint. He was wearing a dress shirt with the sleeves rolled to the elbows despite the cold. Two men in dark jackets materialized behind him and stopped exactly 4 feet back, the way men do when they've been trained to give their employer room to react. He looked at the boy. Something happened to his face. Something brief and total, like a window opening onto a room you weren't supposed to see, and then it closed. Leo. His voice was different now, not commanding. Just a name, said quietly. The way you say a name when you're afraid to say anything else. His pulse is steady but slow, Nora said. Breathing is irregular. I smell something near the seat that I believe is consistent with cyanide exposure. He needs hydroxycobalamin. The EMTs should have it, but if they try to intubate before checking his oxygen levels, you're a nurse. Still not a question. Yes. The man looked at her then, really looked. The way people rarely looked at Nora Quinn, like she was the most important thing in the room. You called me instead of leaving, he said. I called 911 first, she said. I called you because you were the emergency contact and because someone needed to know what was happening. And because, she paused, because leaving didn't seem right. The ambulance crew arrived at the end of the row. Bastien Moray stepped back without being asked and let them work. Nora gave them everything she had, vitals, presentation, the smell, her suspicion, and watched them nod and move with the kind of urgency that told her she hadn't been wrong. One of the men in dark jackets appeared at her elbow. Sir would like you to ride with the boy. Nora looked at him. I'm not family. No, the man said. But you're the one who knows what happened. She rode in the ambulance. The waiting room on the pediatric floor smelled like industrial cleaner and old coffee and anxiety the way all hospital waiting rooms did, in Nora's experience. She'd been in hundreds of them. She'd never been in one as a visitor. It felt different on this side. Bastien Moray had not ridden in the ambulance. He'd arrived 12 minutes later. She'd clocked it without meaning to. And he'd spent the first 20 minutes of that time talking to 3 different hospital administrators and the attending physician in a corridor that the nursing staff had somehow quietly cleared. Nora had watched from her seat near the window and thought about the logistics of clearing a hospital corridor and decided she didn't want to know how that worked. At the 30-minute mark, he came and sat down 2 seats away from her. He didn't speak for a moment. Then, his name is Leo. He's 4. His nanny was supposed to drop him at a dinner event where I was meeting him afterward. He stopped. The nanny isn't answering her phone. I'm sorry, Nora said. The attending says the hydroxycobalamin is working. His oxygen levels are responding. He said it like he was reporting a briefing. Like if he kept the words clinical enough, the feeling underneath them wouldn't get through. They found traces consistent with your assessment. Exposure was early stage. If you'd found him 20 minutes later, he didn't finish that sentence. Nora looked at her hands in her lap. Her duct-taped sneaker. The ID badge clipped to her scrubs. I was cutting through the garage, she said. I'm not supposed to park on B2. Staff parks on B4. I was just cutting through because the elevator on B4 is slow and I had a bus to catch. She paused. I almost didn't look. Bastien Moray said nothing for a long moment. But you did, he said finally. She looked up. His eyes were dark and steady, and she had the sudden strong impression that very few people looked this man in the face for very long. She held it anyway. I did, she said. He nodded once, the way people nod when they've made a decision. You said your name is Nora Quinn. Yes, you work nights at Mercy General. And days at a diner on Clement Street, she said, because she didn't know why she was telling him that, and she said it anyway. I have student loans. Something moved across his face. Not quite amusement, something adjacent to it. You're telling me you're not wealthy. I'm telling you I'm not anyone, she said. I'm no one who knows anyone. I don't have. She made a gesture she couldn't quite finish. I just found a child in a parking garage. That's all this is. That's not all this is, he said. He said it simply, without weight, which somehow gave it more weight than if he'd made it dramatic. She didn't answer. Whoever put Leo in that car knew the garage, he said. He was speaking quietly now, in the particular tone of someone giving information rather than having a conversation. They knew the schedule. They knew which car. They had access to the B2 level, which is restricted. He paused. This wasn't random. Nora processed that. You're telling me someone targeted your son. I'm telling you someone tried to kill my son in a hospital parking garage, and the only reason he's alive is that a night shift nurse cut through the wrong floor. The word kill landed in the waiting room like something dropped from a height. Okay, Nora said carefully. Okay, he repeated, like he was testing the word. I mean, okay, I understand what you're saying. I understand it's serious. I'm not. She stopped. Started again. What do you need from me? He looked at her for a long moment. Right now, he said, I need to know if you saw anyone else in the garage, anyone near the car, anyone watching. She thought back. The fluorescence, the concrete, the painted pillars, the sneaker on the ground. There was a man near the staff elevator, she said slowly. I almost didn't clock him because he was in maintenance coveralls, but he was standing still. Most people in maintenance coveralls are moving. Bastien Moray's expression did not change, but the air in the waiting room changed. One of his men, she hadn't even noticed him standing by the window, was already moving toward the corridor, phone at his ear. You noticed that, Bastien said. I notice things, Nora said. It's a job requirement. He looked at her sneaker, her badge, the compression socks. How much do you make, he said. She blinked. Excuse me, at the hospital. And the diner. Combined, that's not, she started. I'm not making an offer, he said. I'm asking a question. She stared at him. $56,000 a year before taxes, if I pick up enough double shifts. Which I do. He was quiet. You live alone, he said. Yes, you take the bus. I don't have a car. You have $47 in your bank account. She went very still. How do you know that? He didn't answer. How do you know that? She said again, slower. I needed to understand who found my son, he said. I needed to know if it was an accident. He paused. It was an accident. You are exactly who you say you are, Nora Quinn. She wasn't sure if she was supposed to feel relieved or furious. She felt both. You had someone run a background check on me in the last 40 minutes. I had someone run a background check on you in the last 22 minutes. In a hospital waiting room. I have efficient people. Nora stood up. She wasn't sure why she stood up. She wasn't going anywhere. Her legs just needed to be vertical for a moment. I need you to understand that I found your son by accident and I helped him because that's what you do, and I don't want anything. I'm not owed anything. I just want to go home. Bastien Moray looked up at her from his chair. You can't go home, he said. I'm sorry? The man in the maintenance coveralls. You're the only person who can identify him. He said it without inflection, the way someone states a fact about weather. And whoever sent him knows that the nurse who found Leo is still in this building. Nora's stomach went cold. That's not my problem, she said, which was the most she'd ever lied in a single sentence. You made it your problem when you made the call, he said. I know that's not fair. I know you didn't choose this. He stood up then, and he was taller than she'd registered, taller than the chair had suggested, and she had the strange sensation of standing at the edge of something that had no visible bottom. But you saw what you saw, and they know it, which means you're not safe on your own tonight. She looked at him. He looked at her. I'll take you somewhere secure, he said. Tonight only. Tomorrow we sort out the rest. The rest, she repeated. The nanny, the man in the coveralls, who authorized access to the garage. He paused. Arthur Finch. The name came out differently than everything else he'd said. Not weightless, not clinical. It came out with a particular kind of quiet that she recognized, the way nurses used quiet when something had no good outcome. Who is Arthur Finch? She asked. Bastien Moray looked at her with those steady dark eyes and said nothing for 3 seconds. An old business associate, he said, who made the mistake of thinking Leo was leverage. He said it the way someone says a decision they've already made in full, and she understood without further explanation that Arthur Finch had made the last mistake of his career and wasn't aware of it yet. She sat back down. Her bus was long gone. Her diner shift was in 5 hours. She had $47 and no car, and a student loan email she hadn't opened, and someone had apparently just tried to use a 4-year-old boy to send a message, and now she was the only witness, and the man sitting 2 chairs away from her was not. She understood now, fully understood. The way you understand a stove is hot by the way the air above it moves. The man sitting 2 chairs away was not a business executive. He was something else entirely. "Okay," she said for the second time that night. He glanced at her. The almost not quite amusement again. "You keep saying that," he said. "I keep meaning it," she said. They took her in the black SUV, a different one, she noticed, not the one from the garage, and they drove for 20 minutes without telling her where they were going. One of his men rode in the front. Bastien sat in the back beside her and spent the drive on his phone, speaking in what she eventually identified as Italian, low and fast, with the cadence of someone issuing corrections rather than giving orders. She looked out the window. The city moved past. The Embarcadero. The Bay Bridge lit up over the water. Old warehouses turned into something else, turned back into something older. They stopped outside a building that had no signage and a door she would not have noticed if the car hadn't stopped in front of it. Inside was not what she expected. She'd been bracing for cold, for chrome and black marble and the aesthetic of menace. Instead, there was wood paneling, old rugs, bookshelves, along 2 walls with actual books on them, the kind that had been read, a fireplace that wasn't decorative. Lamplight, not overhead lighting. It looked like a home that had been lived in quietly for a long time. A woman appeared from a doorway, 50s, silver-haired, with the bearing of someone who had run this household for decades, and found it beneath her dignity to be impressed by visitors. "Room 3 is ready," she said to Bastien without greeting, and then to Nora, "Are you hungry?" Nora realized she hadn't eaten since noon. "Yes," she said before she could decide whether to pretend otherwise. 15 minutes, the woman said and disappeared. Bastien turned to her. "Her name is Clement. She's been with my family for 26 years. You can trust her more than you trust me." "That's not a high bar right now," Nora said, the almost amusement again. "No," he agreed. "It's not." She ate at a kitchen table that was bigger than her apartment's living room. Clement put down a bowl of pasta and a glass of water and a bread roll and said nothing else. And Nora ate all of it in the particular focused way of someone who has been running on coffee and anxiety for 12 hours and had forgotten what food was for. Bastien sat across from her with a glass of something dark and watched her eat and did not speak, which she appreciated more than she could say. When she was done, he said, "Leo's going to be fine. The attending called while we were driving. He's stable. They're moving him to a private floor." "Good," she said. And then, because she couldn't help it, "You should be there." Something shifted in his face. "I have people there," he said. "People aren't you," she said. "He's 4. He's going to wake up in a hospital, and he's scared, and he's going to want his father." The silence between them stretched. "I'll go at 6, he said finally. "When the building is clear and I know the corridors are secure. Go now," she said. "I'll be fine here. You have," she gestured vaguely at the general atmosphere of armed security and locked doors. "You have all of this." He looked at her for a long moment. Then he stood up. He put on his jacket. He said something in Italian to one of the men who appeared as if from nowhere, and then he stopped in the kitchen doorway and looked back at her. "You told me I should be with my son," he said. "Yes, no one tells me what I should do." She met his eyes. "I just did." There was a pause. Long. The kind that hangs in the air like something hasn't been decided yet. "You're either very brave," he said, "or you've decided I won't hurt you." "You won't," she said. "A man who makes his security team give his child's nurse room to work in a parking garage doesn't hurt people without reason, and I haven't given you one." He was quiet for a moment. "You notice things," he said again, the way he'd said it earlier, but differently now. "It's a job requirement," she said again. He left. The man they found in the maintenance coveralls was named Daniel Greer. She would learn this later, much later, from a source she didn't ask for specifics about. Daniel Greer had been on Arthur Finch's payroll for 3 years, handling situations that required discretion and deniability. He was currently answering questions in a room that Nora was deliberately not told the location of. Arthur Finch, who had been Bastien Moray's father's business partner for 30 years, who had been at the wedding when Bastien married Leo's mother, who had a seat on 3 legitimate boards and a summer place in Maine. Arthur Finch had made a calculation. He had decided that Bastien Moret was overextended, that the operation in the Northeast was vulnerable, that the fastest way to neutralize a man like Bastien Moret was to take something he couldn't replace and hold it. He had miscalculated on 2 counts. The first, Bastien Moret was not overextended. The second, a night shift nurse in duct-taped sneakers had been cutting through the wrong parking level at 2:14 in the morning. 3 days after the garage, Nora was called into a meeting she hadn't agreed to attend. 2 of Bastien's men had appeared outside the diner on Clement Street at the end of her lunch shift and said the word please with such obvious discomfort that she'd gone out of pity. The meeting was in the same building, the room with the bookshelves. Bastien was standing when she came in. Leo was sitting on the rug in front of the fireplace, surrounded by toy cars, his color entirely restored, his voice making engine sounds at a volume disproportionate to his size. He looked up when Nora walked in. "You're the lady from the car," he said. "I am," she said. "My dad says you helped me." "You helped yourself," she said. "I just made a phone call." Leo considered this with the gravity of a 4-year-old and then returned to his cars. Bastien was looking at her. "How's your loan?" he said. She stared at him. "My student loan, yes, it's still there," she said. "I haven't opened the email." "Open it," he said. She frowned, pulled out her phone, found the email, opened it. The outstanding balance was 0. She stared at the screen for a long time. "You can't do that," she said. "It's done," he said. That's over $60,000. Yes, you can't just, I didn't ask for it. You're right. You didn't ask." He crossed his arms. "That's the only reason I did it." She stood in the middle of the room with her phone in her hand and looked at the man across from her, and then at the small boy on the rug making engine sounds, and she thought about the parking garage, and the fluorescents, and the one white sneaker lying on its side on the concrete, and the way she'd almost walked faster instead of slower. "What do you want from me?" she said. "Nothing," he said. She waited. "Right now," he amended. "Nothing. I cleared a debt. You saved something that couldn't be replaced." He paused. "In my world, that's not nothing. In my world, that requires acknowledgement. And if I say I don't want acknowledgement, then I tell you that Leo has been asking about the lady who helped him, and that my household has been 3 people short for 6 months because I can't find staff I trust." He uncrossed his arms. "And I tell you that the position pays 4 times what you make at the diner and the hospital combined, and that you would not be required to interact with any aspect of my business operations, only with this household, only as medical support staff." Nora looked at him. "You want to hire me," she said. "I want to keep you safe," he said, which was not the same answer. "And yes, I want to hire you, and Arthur Finch." The name dropped between them. Bastien said nothing for 3 seconds. "Arthur Finch is not going to be a concern," he said. She understood what that meant. She chose not to ask the question that would require him to explain. "I'm still going to need to think about it," she said. "Of course," he said. "And I'm not going to tell you yes just because you paid off my loans. I would be disappointed if you did. And I'm going to have conditions. I would expect nothing less." She looked at him across the room, at this man who commanded corridors and cleared debts and sat in hospital waiting rooms with the controlled patience of someone who knew how to wait and hated doing it. At the man who had left 2 nights ago, at the word of a night shift nurse in duct-taped sneakers who had told him to go be with his son. She looked at Leo, who had crashed 2 of his cars together with deep satisfaction and was lining them up to do it again. "Okay," she said, for the 3rd time. Bastien Moret looked at her the way he'd looked at her in that waiting room, like she was the most important thing in the room. "You keep saying that," he said. "I keep meaning it," she said. And in the room with the bookshelves and the fire, and the small boy making engine sounds on the floor, something settled, not resolved, not finished, just settled, the way a foundation settles after it's been tested and holds. And Nora Quinn, night shift nurse, diner waitress, cutter through of wrong parking levels, stood in the middle of the most dangerous situation she had ever wandered into and felt, for reasons she couldn't fully explain and wouldn't examine too closely yet, that she was exactly where she was supposed to be. Later, much later, someone would ask her what it felt like to walk into that parking garage, into that story. into that life. She would say, I didn't walk into it. I cut through it. I was trying to catch a bus. And then she would say, but I looked. When I should have kept walking, I looked. And that, she thought, was the only way any story ever really began. If this moved you the way it moved us, drop a comment below. Tell us, would you have made that call? Like and subscribe to Rosie's Romance Library for new stories every week. And if you want to know what happens next between Nora and Bastian, let us know in the comments. We hear you.